Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of US Law Live, US Law's official podcast. I am Michael Judy with the Dysart Taylor firm in Kansas City, Missouri, and I am joined by two of my talented co-hosts, Pam Halford and Jessica Dark. Hello, Pam. Hello, Jessica.
Hello,
Hello,
Mike.
Michael.
How are you both?
I'm doing well. This is Jessica from Pierce Couch in Oklahoma City, and this is going to be a fun episode. I don't think the three of us have done one all together in quite a while.
It has been a while.
Pam, why don't you tell us where you are?
Um, I am in Panama City Beach, Florida, where I am working remote this summer. So I am in my beach condo and really truly living the dream. As soon as I finish this pod, I'm going to go to the beach for a little bit and then I'm going to mahjong actually. And then I'm going to come back and record a little session for a mock trial that I've got coming up. Um, and then probably go for cocktails.
You're probably the only lawyer I've talked to lately who's not saying living the dream sarcastically.
It's true. It's true. Well, today we have a special edition of the podcast, and it's going to be a three-parter. But this is part one of our interview with Roger Yaffe. Hello, Roger.
Hi, Pam. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Mike. How are you all doing?
Oh my gosh, Roger, the man, the myth, the legend, the podcast guest. How are you?
When I got the email about this, I figured you must have had three other people in front of me that bailed on you last minute. So I appreciate the opportunity to do this and appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit more about kind of where we've been as an organization since we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year.
Yeah, and as Pam mentioned, this is a little unique. We're going to do a three-part series with you, Roger, because you've been around almost since the beginning and have seen a lot of U.S. law, seen its growth, its changes, its development, the good, the bad, the ugly. But for this first podcast, we're going to kind of focus on those early days of U.S. law. But before we kind of do that, and your involvement of U.S. law, I guess, give our listeners an idea of what you were doing, in the months or years before U.S. law approached you to join the organization.
Certainly. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, this kind of came out of the blue. My background is actually the golf industry. I grew up playing golf competitively down in South Florida and was fortunate enough after graduating from school to relocate back to South Florida and got involved in the golf business and specifically within the golf industry, association management and event planning. And did that for about 10 years, including a stint working out of the headquarters of the LPGA in Daytona Beach and then made a decision that I was going to relocate. It was just myself, my dog, and my car, and drove from South Florida up to Chicago, which is actually where I was born and still had a lot of extended family, but had never really lived there, and decided to start a business. And that business in 1998 was an association management um, company that was an opportunity to for smaller associations to outsource their day-to-day operations. So got that up and started, and that's kind of where I got to before I got a phone call in 2001.
And how did you get into the association management industry? Was that something you ever dreamed you were going to do, or did it just happen?
No, it was definitely not on the bucket list of jobs that I was thinking about. It just happened naturally. Again, grew up playing golf. South Florida, a lot of golf industry organizations that are based down here in South Florida. And after graduating from school, went to SMU and got a business degree there and just utilized some golf contacts and started at an organization called the National Golf Foundation, which is a trade association for the golf industry. So, right off the bat, which is an interesting story, one of the first things I was responsible for was National Golf Foundation had a Far East division called NGF Japan. And NGF Japan every year would send over about 40 or 50 golf industry professionals, owners and operators of the multi-tier driving ranges that are so popular in Japan. And I was put in charge of chaperoning them for a couple weeks every summer. We put on educational programs for them. They went to great golf resorts to play golf. And did that for 5 years. And that one of those connections is a connection for how I ended up eventually meeting my future wife. Fast forward up to the year 2000, during the dot-com days, before the dot-com days sunk rapidly, and had brought over a group of folks over to Japan. And again, that's a long story, a real long story, and a real long distance relationship. But so that's really kind of how it got started. And again, worked the LPGA, which was on the association side.
And so you're doing the association management, you have your own company. At some point, US Law reaches out, or do you reach out to US Law? How did that connection happen?
It was purely happenstance. This is 2001. I had a website that made it look like it was 1986. If you look back at that website today, it's
You had
amazing.
Hubert hopping on some
It's amazing
tubes.
we ever got hired when I look back at that website. Um, and I started this business and got a phone call. Got a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Jim O'Hagan. The firm was O'Hagan Smith and Amundsen in Chicago, and that is kind of the legacy firm still today as an Illinois member, Amundsen Davis. He had found my website. That's the connection there, which again, kind of surprised that he decided to give me a call. And he said, I'm starting something that's interesting. Would you have the opportunity to walk over to my office right now and meet with me? And my office was about 5 blocks away. I had never had any interface at all with anybody in the legal world. I never had to hire a lawyer before. Nobody in my family is a lawyer. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Why is this guy whose name is on the building basically want to meet with me? And
The
so I went
website must
over.
have really been working for you, Roger, if you were
It,
able to
it,
immediately drop everything and walk 5 blocks for this
it,
random meeting.
it should also tell you a little bit about my portfolio of business at that point, that nobody was looking for me to do anything, and I had a free afternoon. It was either going to be visit Jim or go to a Cubs game. So
I'm surprised
I fortunately went to go visit Jim.
you even called
Um,
a lawyer back. Most of my clients or random people I call, they say, "Ugh, anytime I see it's a lawyer, I just ignore, send a voicemail."
Yeah, well, I shortchanged that part of the conversation. One of the folks that worked for me took the message. I was actually out at lunch and left the message. And again, I decided to go ahead and call back, just maybe more curiosity than anything else. So went over and Jim and I spent, gosh, probably 3 hours together. And Jim, again, is considered one of the kind of co-founders of the organization. And I realized about 15 minutes into the conversation, it wasn't the website was the reason that Jim called me. It was because he knew about my background in the golf business. And Jim, to this day, has always been a big golfer and somebody that's kind of been involved. He's on a USGA committee member and other things within golf. So we spent 3 hours together, and I think we spent 15 minutes talking about US law. Um, and the other part of that very funny story was another reason I think that it cinched the deal later on was Jim was talking about the fact that he was taking a buddy's trip to Pebble Beach, but he hadn't made a tee time yet at Pebble Beach. And I happen to know one of the assistant golf pros, went back to my office and made a quick call. And I think I got him like a $10 discount on his green fees. Pebble doesn't like to give much in terms of discounting. Anyhow, so fast forward, sent him some information, and then quite honestly didn't hear back. And I thought, okay, that was fun. Well, let's keep moving on. And about 2 months later, got another phone call from Jim. Said exact same thing. Can you come over? I'm like, sure, yeah, absolutely. Whoa! I walked into a hornet's nest. So the founding firms of U.S. law were all represented in Jim's office. That includes
And
Pam.
you had no idea this was coming. This was
I
a
had no
complete
idea.
ambush.
No idea. And Pam, it includes your partner, Charles Carr, was there. Nick Roush, who's I know one of your co-hosts, his partner, Mark Solheim, and several others, and spent about 2 hours getting grilled by litigators. And again, not knowing what I walked
That
into.
sounds fun.
Yeah, it was great. But good news, got the offer to take on the management of this brand new organization that had six founding law firms at that point. And I still to this day have a copy of the initial contract because we're an association management company for US Law. We're not actually employees. And I look back at what the monthly management fee was back in 2001, and I'm thinking, God, I must have been desperate.
I was
Um,
just going to ask you, did you make a pile of money from this?
Not at all. Not at all. But Jim had done, and Charles and others had done such a great job of selling me on the potential of this organization. I thought, heck, why not? So that's kind of how it all came together.
And what was it from that meeting with the big six that you took away from it that, or did you take away from that meeting that it was going to be a successful organization or that it was something different than you had experienced before?
Well, I think, I certainly went back and did some research about the individuals that were at that meeting, and you could see what they've done in their careers and the success that they've had. And what was a little bit unique about this was Charles had broken off from his previous firm to start Carr Allison, and Jim likewise had separated. But you could see the success that they had had with their previous firms and also with a previous iteration of another legal network. One of the things they said to me was, "Hey, we know how to do this, and we know how to do it better than the previous organization that we were involved with." And so between that and again, that significant sum of money from the management fee, I figured, what the heck, can't lose anything off of this opportunity.
And what was it during that meeting you said that, they gave you or told you that they knew what they were doing and they could do it better than the other organization? What were those early thoughts and ideas that they had that would set them apart from the other legal marketing organizations?
Again, I think it really kind of comes back down to their success in their own individual careers. One of the interesting things I look back on now, especially I would say amongst Charles, Mark, Solheim, who I mentioned before, and Jim, were these are three individuals from three totally different parts of the country, different law firms. But I could see a synergy in their thought, and I could see the friendship and the relationships that they had already created. And again, this thing had just gotten started 2 months earlier. So I thought really kind of that's where I started to think about maybe this thing's got some legs.
What did they tell you that they wanted to do? Like, what was the first order of business for you?
Open a bank account.
Okay. That
Okay, second
tracks
order
with
of
that
business.
power
Two,
six.
2 months into the organization, no bank account. Open a bank account. I'm not sure we had any money, but we opened a bank account. So I think that was the first thing. Um, the second thing was this would have been early summertime, and there was a decision already made before we even knew who else would be there that we were going to host the first in-person meeting in November of 2001, which actually ended up happening in Naples, Florida. So put together a meeting in Naples, Florida, even though you don't know who's actually going to show up or what we're going to talk about. So that was another part. And then I think that the other part, which quickly started to happen, was Jim was nice and knows that he caught me off guard twice previously. So going forward, we would put something on the calendar. And obviously, one of the first goals was we were six founding firms, and we wanted to grow this organization. So Jim would send me a message, say, let's meet at certain time, certain location. Most of the time, it was in his office, and let's focus on the state of Arizona, or let's focus on the state of California. And what Jim asked me to do was go to Martindale Hubble and researched basically all these potential firms that might be interested in U.S. law. And again, this was 2001. We really weren't working with iPhones and all the other technology that we have right now. So I would walk over 5 blocks over to his office with these file folders of printouts of Martindale Hubbles, and having no idea if any of these firms really were ones that the organization was going to be interested in, but took them over and literally just would sit in Jim's office and we would start calling law firms. And I say we, really, Jim was the one that was making the calls. And always interesting, I think back at some of the firms that did come in. There was one firm, which was an early firm after the first six that came in. And I swear Jim left like six voicemail messages for the key contact of the firm and never got a call back. And finally got a call back, and that was has been and has been till recently one of our most long-standing firms of U.S. law.
What were you looking for? What was Jim looking for in these firms? I mean, obviously, someone with good standing in the legal community in their area, but anything more specific, practice areas or anything like that?
Yeah, I think Jessica, on the certainly the practice areas was a big part of it. I think as many people know, while this organization was not founded to be exclusively a transportation organization, there's no doubt with the practices of the early founders as well as the next kind of crop of firms that came in, transportation was a big part of that. So I certainly think that was one of the things we looked at, but it certainly wasn't the only thing. We looked at the client base that these firms could ultimately bring and introduce to the network, because as a business development organization, we wanted to make sure that we were, especially in the early days where we were just starting to contact clients about the start of this organization, that I think that part, and I think that, certainly, and I think it's still true to this day, relationships, not only relationships within the organization, but relationships that folks have outside the organization to bring potential members in, was critical. So there's no doubt that there was some, using some of our original members' networks themselves to reach out and talk to firms about the creation of this.
And
Would y'all get everybody on a call and say like, okay, this person is, or this firm is interested, and what do we think about them? And they would fit in this way, or was it like, all right, we got one, let's do it?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, certainly, Jim was taking a lot of the lead, and certainly Charles Carr was doing it as well. Um, and then it's a matter of if you got some firms that were maybe interested, certainly sharing that information with the rest of the founding organizations. Again, as a six-firm organization, that was our leadership, that was our board, that was it. And so, it was a matter of then getting involved, and certainly everybody that was part of that initial group was helpful in their own right in terms of introducing prospective members to the organization.
and what was the energy like? I mean, did you share in their optimism? Did you have any, doubts is maybe the wrong word, but reservations, or were you bought in from day one as well?
I was bought in from day one, but if we want to fast forward to November of that year, that first meeting in Naples, that's really where I think it sunk in that this thing's got some legs and really could be a significant force going forward. Again, that was those original six firms that were involved, and by that point, November, we had brought in a number of firms. Jessica, I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember Pierce Couch. They may have been there. If not, they were probably not too far behind that.
I think that's right. I think it was a couple years in.
Yeah. So it was there where there were probably 25 people in the room, no clients, just member attorneys and spouses for a couple days in Naples. The reason it was Naples was Jim had his winter location at this resort, and so that made sense. It was an inexpensive option, and but the dynamic of the the friendships that were created, even just those first couple days, the relationships that were started, the enthusiasm that was in the room. And I still remember at one point in the meeting, Jim O'Hagan getting up and saying, look around this room. First of all, you're never going to be in another U.S. law room that is of this size. And what he was emphasizing was that that size was a great start and was something that we really obviously wanted to grow, but it would almost never get as good as it is right now with just these 25 people in the room. Well, I kind of disagree with that because I think it's gotten better, but it resonated, and I think everybody that was in that room who then kind of again was helpful as we continued to grow kind of took heed to those remarks and we just were off and running at that point.
For everybody who doesn't know, the vetting process obviously looks much different these days than it did back when you were walking over with your Martindale Hubble stacks of papers making cold calls.
Essentially the yellow pages.
Right.
Right.
So that process now takes, how long do you think, Roger, on average?
Uh, Months.
Months? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, we're only looking for firms in markets that are open for what reason,
Right.
whatever reason. The good news is we don't typically have many markets that are open,
Right.
especially if you're talking about the US. International is probably a different discussion. So that's the good news. We don't lose a lot of firms. And those that we do, I think there's always really good reasons around it. Sometimes there are firms that separate. There are sometimes firms that grow too much. And so there are just decisions that are made either on the U.S. law side or on the member side to part ways. But it does take time. It takes a little more time than it does now. Now it takes more time than it did in the early days. There's no doubt about it. Firms are obviously looking at their expenses. Firms want to understand what the value proposition for them to get involved in U.S. law is. One of the interesting things that I think is a challenge for us that I would imagine that all other legal networks have similar challenges is every one of you all is incredibly busy. And so we're selling a business development organization to lawyers and law firms that already have plenty of work. So there's other aspects of that value proposition that I think are so important beyond just the new business that comes in the door. And so I think we've been able to prove that as well with a lot of things that we've done. But yeah, it takes a little more time.
And one of the things you mentioned earlier, Roger, and it's been a theme through a lot of our podcasts as we, celebrate the 25 years, is the relationship building. Um, when was it immediate, kind of your connection with these folks when you felt like you were part of the inner circle? I mean, I know with the first six folks that were in the room, they knew each other, they knew each other's backgrounds. How long did it take for you to feel like you were part of that group and you were ingrained, so to
25
speak?
years? No, I'm just a joke. Um, I don't know. I think I've always been made to feel part of this. Maybe that's because I was part of it so early and didn't come in the middle. I think that certainly helped me, and I think that's a big part of it. But I think it also just has to do with everyone's personality. You know, truly, there's nobody I've ever met in this organization in 25 years that I've walked away from a conversation and I've said to myself, I have no interest in talking to that person ever again.
You
Oh
know,
my God. Whew, I'm relieved.
You're
yeah,
off the hook, Pam. It took us a little while, maybe the third conversation, but you're off the hook.
for
But
now.
but
Thank
it
Um,
goodness.
you know,
it's the
Roger, we usually talk about with our guests, like other member lawyers, what are some tips that you would have for someone getting involved in the network? And I'm interested to hear from you from the US law side of things as opposed to a member firm. But what is it? Is there anything that you have seen from your side of things that, you think that new lawyers coming to meetings or clients coming to meetings that you think they should take away?
So one of the things I always say, and it's a very difficult thing. I'll say it and I'll immediately say it's a tough thing to define what it is. But I always recommend that anybody that's getting involved in U.S. law for the first time, new law firm, new lawyer from an existing firm, um, be visible. And again, it's kind of like, all right, how do you define what being visible is? Being visible is
Not taking a
being
nap in the middle of the day,
correct. Being at breakfast at 7 a.m.
Mike
when breakfast
Judy.
opens up. There you go, Mike.
being at the
There you
bar
go.
at midnight. Pam.
Correct. One of the things we always said about U.S. law is you can sleep on the way home.
Yeah.
You don't need to sleep while you're there. But it's about visibility, exposure. That doesn't mean to be aggressive or too eager, but the people, and this has been true for 25 years, nothing has changed about that. Those attorneys who are the most visible, um, the ones that I see a lot, are the ones that ultimately I think are the ones that are the most successful in this organization. And again, it's a little bit tough to define what that means. Sure, yeah, absolutely. When you have a chance to volunteer to be a speaker facilitator, certainly do it, write an article, do all those things. That's all great stuff, and I think that's part of it. But again, just being around. And again, the great thing about this organization is we rarely, if have ever, had attorneys where they've turned people off.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that that's the beauty of an organization such as this, and that's why the members want to participate in it. It's why your invited clients want to participate as well.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, touching on that being visible, I mean, I think we've all seen that firsthand that if you're just around, the members of this organization go out of their way to make you feel included. And if they see somebody that may be a little nervous or apprehensive and, being a little bit of a wallflower, it's almost a source of pride to go over and grab that person. Hey, why don't you come on over and talk with us? Or, that group goes over and, strikes up a conversation. And it's unique to this organization. I've never been a part or seen it in another organization where people go out of their way to include you and to make you visible and to not just to include you, but also to promote you because they know in promoting you and lifting you up, they lift up everybody. So it really has been, a great thing to be a part of.
And Mike, that literally started day one. And I think that's why even now, 25 years later, you all, especially because you weren't involved in the organization for the first 17, 18 years. Um, but that started early and through previous generations of U.S. law members has continued to this day. And you're right. I mean, I hear it all the time. I hear it especially from new member firms. They're like, they've never experienced anything like this when they go to other industry events or places, especially where their competition is. And so it's a tough thing to we can talk about it and certainly when you go to events you can experience it, but it is certainly unique and again started from day one.
And I know we'll get into, some of the evolutions of US law in our future episodes, but looking back, did you ever think that this is what the organization would be today? In those early days, could you ever have envisioned it being this big, this successful with this much growth?
Yes.
Nice.
And it's
Simple answer.
because and honestly it's
He's
because
clairvoyant, ladies and gentlemen.
no, it's because those original folks kind of ingrained that in me. And they were the ones that said, this is what it's going to look like. And I'll be honest with you, they hit the nail on the head. And I know they're all very proud of what has been created for 25 years. And certainly, again, as we proceeded, the generations of attorneys that are involved. But the answer is yeah. I know it almost sounds a little egotistical, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me. It has to do with the folks that are involved in this from our membership.
And again, I think that you just did another thing there that I see, a lot of lawyers who we've had on and guests we've had on this podcast is nobody wants to take the credit. It's not me. It was Roger. It wasn't
Hmm.
Roger. It was, this founding member firm. And no, it wasn't this member firm. It was another founding member firm. I mean, everybody they love to pass the buck. They love to, praise others. And I think, your answer there is, just again, another testament to the network.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for the, first installment of our three-part podcast. For the next couple of episodes, we'll be talking about U.S. law's growth. Some things that work, some things that didn't work, maybe some things you'd want to tweak or do differently, but then also highlight more of the success and growth of U.S. law. And then, maybe in some of the sessions get into some stories and behind the scenes things that, our listeners may not know. Of course, PG and not to get anybody in trouble, but certainly looking forward to those future episodes. But before we wrap up, Roger, anything else about those early days that?
I'm looking forward to those episodes. I tell people the only reason that the organization keeps me around is because I know all the old stories and where the bodies are buried. So
Yeah, we want the tea, Roger.
I think we need to dedicate an entire episode just to the fun stories. And by the way, we could just do it to all, as everybody knows, we have so many fun bus stories in U.S.
Oh
law.
my Lord, yeah.
That could be an episode on its own.
Yeah. Well, Pam, Jessica, thank you for joining me. Roger, we'll talk again soon, but I know I speak for Pam and Jessica and also Nick, who's not here, but also all of the other listeners and members of U.S. Law and folks who have been involved throughout the years. But thank you for your time, not only for this podcast, but also in everything you do in U.S. Law. And we'll get into more of that in the future, but thank you for today.
No, thanks everybody. Thank you guys for continuing to do this and making U.S. Law Live a big part of what we're doing as an organization.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of U.S. Law Live. Stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 of our series with Roger Yaffe. See y'all.
Bye.